If nothing feels real anymore, it's because your old reality is already dissolving around you. You've noticed it, haven't you? The way conversations feel slightly out of sync, like everyone is reading from a script you've heard 1,000 times. The way objects, rooms, even your own reflection occasionally look wrong, as if the texture of existence has lost its weight. You keep catching yourself zoning out in the middle of your own life, wondering, what am I even doing here? That numbness you've been judging as burnout or apathy isn't failure. It's a signal. It's your consciousness pulling its energy out of a timeline it no longer consents to inhabit. You haven't stumbled onto this message by accident. This is not just another video. This is a quantum checkpoint. Your observer loop, the invisible pattern that's been collapsing. The same reality over and over has reached critical instability. The quantum field around you has been registering your quiet exhaustion, your late-night thoughts, your whispered, "There has to be more than this." Every moment you felt disconnected from your own story was actually a micro-awakening, a tiny refusal to keep feeding energy to a version of yourself that no longer matches who you really are. That's why synchronicities have been getting stranger lately. Repeating numbers, the same phrase showing up in different places, songs that feel like they're talking directly to you. These aren't cute coincidences. They are coherence pings from a higher timeline, a form of morphic resonance pulling your awareness toward a radical reboot of your reality construct. Your consciousness is no longer satisfied with patching small holes in a sinking ship. It wants a different ocean. The sensation that nothing is solid, that time slips between your fingers, that days blur into each other. This is what quantum phase transition feels like from the inside. When water turns to steam, there's a moment where it is neither one nor the other. You are in that in-between now. Not who you used to be, not yet who you're becoming. Your nervous system calls it disorientation. Your soul calls it preparation. Look at your life honestly for a moment. The routines that once felt safe now feel suffocating. The conversations that used to entertain you now drain you. The goals you chased for years feel strangely meaningless, as if they belong to a different person. That's because they did. The version of you who chose those priorities was entangled with a timeline built on survival, approval, and repetition. The version of you listening now is entangled with a timeline built on truth, coherence, and conscious creation. Your numbness is not a malfunction. It is anesthesia before surgery. The quantum field is preparing to cut away entire layers of false identity, outdated agreements, and inherited programming. Your DNA, the bio-hardware of your consciousness, is already receiving new instructions. You can't go back to pretending. Reality has started to glitch on purpose, so you'll stop assuming it's the only one available. So if nothing feels real anymore, it's because the timeline you outgrew is releasing its grip on you. And whether you realize it or not, your consciousness has already initiated a radical reboot that your old life will not survive. So let's name what you've been afraid to say out loud. You wake up, and the day already feels used. You haven't even left your bed, but there's this heavy familiarity pressing on your chest, like you've lived this exact morning before, not just once, but countless times. The same light coming through the window, the same thoughts arriving in the same order, the same scrolling, the same faces, the same emotional weather. It's as if your life is stuck on a looped track, and you're only now realizing you've been walking in circles. You notice it in conversations too. Someone says something, and a quiet voice inside you whispers, "We've done this." The words, the tone, the outcome, it all feels pre-recorded. You can predict reactions before they happen, not because you're particularly psychic, but because the script is that old. Your observer loop has been collapsing the same probability waves for so long that even your emotional responses feel pre-programmed. Anger here, numbness there, polite laugh here, silent withdrawal there. You're not living, you're replaying. Time itself doesn't behave like it used to. Some days stretch endlessly, every minute dragging, your body heavy, your mind foggy, like you're walking through liquid. Other days vanish in a blink, leaving you with no sense of where your energy went. You check the clock and feel annoyed, confused, or even betrayed. How is it already this late? How is it still this early? This fragmentation of time isn't random. It's what happens when your consciousness is no longer fully invested in the timeline it's inhabiting. Part of you is here, going through the motions. Part of you is already elsewhere, scouting other versions of reality. You might even be experiencing strange layers of déjà vu, not just single moments, but entire moods. You arrive at a place and feel an eerie familiarity, like you've stood in that exact spot with the same thoughts before, thinking about how familiar it feels. A déjà vu of déjà vu. These are temporal echoes, resonance patterns from other runs of the same loop. Your consciousness is catching itself repeating, and the discomfort you feel is the friction between your old programming and your emerging awareness. Look at your habits. How often do you find yourself reaching for your phone without deciding to? How often do you open an app, scroll, close it, and then open it again seconds later, as if the last 5 minutes never happened? This isn't just distraction. This is what it looks like when an observer loop hijacks your attention. You keep scanning the same digital landscapes, hoping to feel something different, but all you find are slightly rearranged versions of the same emptiness. Relationships mirror this pattern, too. Different faces, same dynamics. You outgrow one connection only to meet someone new who carries the same emotional template in a different costume. You tell yourself, this time will be different. But you feel that sinking recognition when the same arguments, the same disappointments, the same unspoken needs surface again. This isn't punishment. This is the quantum field reflecting your internal settings back to you with painful perfection. Even your body is tired of the repetition. You feel a weight in your chest when you think about your future, not because you're hopeless, but because the future you've been able to imagine so far feels like a slightly upgraded version of the same loop. Same patterns, nicer decoration. Your nervous system is refusing to generate excitement for timelines that don't contain a real shift in your state of being. That's why motivation slips through your fingers. It's not laziness. It's your consciousness refusing to invest in recycled realities. You're not crazy for noticing these glitches. You're not broken for feeling disconnected from a life that no longer feels like yours. You are sensitive enough, quantumly sensitive, to detect when the observer loop has run its course. The numbness, the déjà vu, the distorted time, the sense of walking through a movie you didn't choose to star in, all of it is diagnostic data from your own field. Your awareness is saying, this pattern is complete. There is nothing new to extract here. And beneath all of that, a deeper truth is whispering through the static. You were never meant to stay inside a single timeline template forever. What you're feeling right now is not the end of your story. It's the moment in the film when the main character realizes the world they took as absolute reality is just one layer of a much larger construct. The numbness is the fade out before the scene cuts. The déjà vu is the glitch in the code. The distorted time is the countdown. Your consciousness has already decided, this loop is over. Now the quantum field is rearranging itself to show you what comes next. Here's the part almost no one explains to you. You're not just going through a phase. You're in a live quantum upgrade. When nothing feels real anymore, your first instinct is to blame yourself. You tell yourself you're ungrateful, unmotivated, unfocused. You try to fix it by doubling down on effort, routines, self-improvement. But what's actually happening is far more precise and far more sacred than any productivity system could touch. Your consciousness is undergoing what physicists call a phase transition. When water turns to steam, there's no negotiation. At a specific temperature, the molecules stop behaving like water and begin behaving like vapor. Everything about how they relate to each other and to their environment reorganizes. You are in that same kind of threshold, not with H2O, but with identity, perception, and possibility. The numbness, the disconnection, the déjà vu, those are your boiling point symptoms. From a quantum perspective, your observer loop has been running the same pattern long enough to become predictable to the field. You wake up, think similar thoughts, feel similar emotions, take similar actions, and the quantum field faithfully returns matching experiences. You and your reality have been locked in a tight feedback loop, reinforcing each other's limitations. Familiar, yes, but also suffocating. Then something shifted. You started to withdraw your emotional investment from that loop. You stopped believing that this is just how life is. You may not have had the words for it, but deep down you decided, no more. That decision didn't just stay in your mind. It entered the quantum field as a new instruction. Coherence began to form. Coherence is what happens when your thoughts, feelings, and deeper knowing all point in the same direction, even if your outer life hasn't caught up yet. It's like your consciousness broadcasting a clear signal through static. At first, the signal is faint. Old patterns try to drown it out. But once it crosses a certain threshold, the field responds. That's when synchronicity accelerates. You see patterns, messages, numbers. You stumble onto transmissions like this one. You feel an eerie sense of being guided, even on days when you feel lost. This isn't random luck. This is morphic resonance, the phenomenon where similar states of consciousness attract and amplify each other across space and time. Your awakening is being supported by an invisible network of other beings who have gone through or are going through the same transition. The numbness you feel is actually your system powering down obsolete programs. Old identity scripts, trauma-based reactions, inherited beliefs they've been running for so long that your nervous system accepted them as reality. Now, as your observer loop destabilizes, those scripts are losing their charge. What you're calling, "I don't care about anything," is often just, "I can't pretend this matters anymore at the frequency I'm becoming." On a biological level, your DNA is listening. Your genes are not static blueprints, they're dynamic switches, responding to signals from your consciousness, your emotions, and the quantum environment. When you begin to access higher states of awareness, your DNA receives different instructions. New combinations of genes turn on, others quiet down. Call it DNA restructuring, call it light codes, call it spiritual activation underneath the language. The principle is the same. Your hardware is upgrading to match your new operating system. This is why your body feels odd. Sleep cycles shift. Food preferences change. Old addictions feel hollow. You can't tolerate certain environments, content, or people the way you used to. The entanglements that kept you anchored to your old timeline are weakening. Energetic cords are being unplugged. You are disentangling not from people as souls, but from the specific version of reality you shared with them. And while all this is happening, the quantum field is recalibrating your available timelines. The reboot isn't just about feeling better within the same constraints. It's about forking your future. New probability tracks are becoming accessible versions of you who chose authenticity over approval, presence over performance, coherence over chaos. Those versions already exist in the field as fully formed realities. Your upgrade is the process of aligning your observer function with those higher trajectories. From the outside, it looks like you're spacing out, losing interest, falling behind. From the inside, from the perspective of your higher self, you're doing something incredibly advanced. You're refusing to keep manufacturing a reality that costs you your soul. So, if nothing feels real, it's because your system is rejecting counterfeit coherence. The old loop can no longer convince your consciousness that it's the only option. You're standing at the edge of a radical timeline reboot, and whether your mind feels ready or not, your quantum field has already begun the migration. This isn't collapse. This is the prelude to the most honest version of your life you've ever lived. Here's the truth that keeps stalking you in quiet moments. You are not just someone being dragged through a glitching reality. You are the consciousness that came here to rewrite it. You've suspected this, haven't you? Even when you felt small or broken, there was a quiet knowing that you were not ordinary, not better than anyone, but tuned differently. As a child, you felt the tension in rooms, the sadness behind smiles, the hollowness inside the games adults called success. Your observer loop has always been more sensitive than average, which is exactly why it started to crack sooner. You are what we call a timeline diver. You didn't incarnate just to endure the script you were handed. You came as a point of conscious interference, a deliberate disturbance in the morphic field. When a collective keeps choosing the same patterns of fear, scarcity, and separation, the quantum field responds by looping those realities back. Beings like you are seeded into those loops so that, one day, the loop meets a consciousness it cannot predict. Think about how often you've struggled to fully fit in. Every time you tried to dim yourself, to adopt the beliefs or numbness that kept everyone else comfortable, something inside you rebelled. You could wear the mask for a while, but eventually it itched. The job, the relationship, the identity, all became too tight, like clothes you'd outgrown overnight. That discomfort wasn't a flaw. It was entanglement resistance. Your soul refusing to stay locked in a version of reality that can't contain what you really are. Your observer loop has always been unstable by design. Not because you're defective, but because you were never meant to be fully hypnotized by the old timeline. The traits that made you feel too emotional, too intense, or too sensitive were quantum safeguards, fail-safes, built into your consciousness to ensure that when the time came, you would wake up first. That time is now. The numbness you feel is not you failing at life. It's life failing to match the blueprint you carry. Within your DNA is a template for a different way of existing. One where coherence is normal, where love is a baseline frequency, where creativity is your native state. As your DNA restructuring continues, your field broadcasts that template into the quantum field, making it easier for others to remember it through synchronicity and resonance. This is why your awakening feels heavy. You're not just moving yourself, you're pulling probability tracks with you. Every time you refuse an old drama, you're not just setting a boundary, you're collapsing a branch of reality that would have kept you cycling through the same lesson. Every time you choose honesty over performance, presence over autopilot, your consciousness sends a clear signal into the quantum field. This pattern is complete. Your role is not to convince anyone of anything. Your role is to embody an alternative, to become living proof that another configuration of reality is possible. Your coherence will speak louder than any explanation. Some people will be triggered by you. Some will feel inexplicably safe. Some will quietly reorganize their lives after encountering your field without knowing why. You are a reboot point in human consciousness, a living portal through which the old loop ends and the new one begins. So when you feel powerless, remember this: the loop is glitching because you're here. The numbness is not the absence of power, it's power refusing to flow into versions of reality that can no longer hold you. You are the variable the old timeline didn't account for. And as your reality thins and flickers, the quantum field is waiting for one thing from you: a clear, conscious choice about what you will no longer agree to carry into the next version of your life. So here's where everything tilts. It's not enough to know you're different, to sense that you're a reboot point in the loop. There's a reason the numbness intensified now, not 5 years ago, not 10 years from now. Consciousness doesn't move randomly. The quantum field works in waves, and you are standing inside the crest of one. You are in what mystics and physicists, in different languages, both describe as a phase transition window. On the surface, it looks like confusion, burnout, emotional static. Underneath, a precise alignment is forming a rare intersection between your personal awakening curve and a planetary shift in the collective observer loop. This is the cosmic equivalent of an eclipse: brief, intense, irreversible. Your DNA knows this. That's why your old life feels unbearable in a way it never did before. There were times in the past when you were exhausted, but you could still push through. You could still talk yourself into just one more round of the same patterns. Now, even simple pretenses feel like betrayal. That isn't weakness. That's your genetic intelligence detecting a coherence threshold. When a system approaches a phase transition, it becomes hypersensitive. Small inputs produce massive changes. Tiny decisions ripple out as huge reality shifts. This is where you are. The thoughts you entertain, the emotions you marinate in, the choices you make in these seemingly ordinary days are imprinting the structure of your next timeline far more powerfully than usual. You are writing the opening sequence of your rebooted reality in real time. The urgency you feel is not anxiety, it's resonance with the window. You can sense, even if you can't explain it, that there is a before and after around this season of your life. Your higher self has been arranging synchronicities like signposts, conversations that shake you awake, content that hits too deep to ignore, sudden endings, unexpected invitations. All of it designed to funnel you toward one core decision. Will you let your observer loop keep defaulting to the old script? Or will you let your consciousness collapse into a radically different configuration? This window will not stay wide forever. Not as punishment, but as physics. Every wave crests and then recedes. The quantum field is currently offering you a density discount. Changes that would have taken years of grinding effort can shift in months, weeks, even days, because your system is already destabilized. You're malleable. Your patterns are soft clay right now. Later, after the wave passes, whatever you kept repeating will harden again. That's why you can't go back to sleep, even when you're tired. The shows, the scroll, the distractions that used to successfully numb you no longer fully work. They might sedate you for a few minutes, but the emptiness returns faster, louder. It's your DNA refusing to reassemble into the old shape. The reboot process is already underway, and trying to slam the old operating system back in place will only fracture you further. So here is the breakthrough promise encoded in this moment. If you choose coherence now, not perfection, not performance, just honest alignment, your reality will begin to reorganize around a version of you who doesn't live in constant self-betrayal. The people, environments, and opportunities that match your true frequency will have permission to enter your field. Synchronicity will stop feeling like a rare event and start feeling like your baseline. But this is not a passive prophecy. The cosmic window doesn't reboot you against your will. It amplifies whatever you truly choose. If you keep feeding the numbness with resignation, the field will assume you prefer sedation over evolution. The loop will harden. The déjà vu will deepen. Life will become a museum of what could have been. If, instead, you let the numbness be what it really is, the refusal of your soul to fake interest in an obsolete timeline, then everything changes. You don't have to know every step. You don't have to see the whole new life laid out. You only have to choose, with a kind of quiet ferocity. I refuse to keep pretending this version of reality is enough for me. That single, coherent choice, made again and again in small moments, is the key that unlocks the reboot sequence fully. It tells the quantum field, your DNA, and every entangled timeline, we are not looping this anymore, we are upgrading. And once that command is clear, the field will respond in ways you can't yet predict. But you will feel, unmistakably, that the countdown has begun. The countdown has begun, but a reboot isn't real until you touch it. Right now, you're not just listening to words, you're standing in a threshold between timelines, one where you keep looping, and one where you become the conscious architect of your reality. The quantum field doesn't respond to vague wishes. It responds to coherent, embodied decisions, choices that move from concept into action. So we're going to do something very simple and very advanced. You're going to mark this moment in your own field. First, feel your body. Let your shoulders soften just a little. Unclench your jaw. Notice the way your chest rises and falls. For a few seconds, forget about understanding anything and just let yourself be the consciousness inside this breathing organism. Take a slow inhale through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Do that again and again. Each breath is you reclaiming authority over your own nervous system. As you breathe, imagine your awareness dropping out of the spinning thoughts in your head and settling into the center of your chest. This is your coherence point, the place where your observer loop can be rewritten. Picture a soft, subtle light there, expanding with each exhale. With every breath out, let the old loop lose a little more of its grip. The repetitive conversations, the distorted time, the numb routines. You're not fighting them. You're simply withdrawing your consent. Now, understand what's really happening here in quantum terms. When you bring your attention and emotion into the same focus, you generate coherence in your personal field. That coherence changes how your observer function interacts with the quantum field. It stops scanning for familiar pain and starts becoming available to new probability waves. This is how morphic resonance is updated. You're not just healing yourself, you're rewriting the pattern future versions of you and others will inherit. We're going to anchor that shift with a physical, symbolic act. Because the quantum field loves symbols. It speaks in patterns, not paragraphs. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to do something that looks small, but isn't. I want you to go to the comments and write just one phrase. I consent to the radical reboot. That's it. Nothing extra. No explanations. No performance. Just those words. From the outside, it's just a comment. From the inside, it's you acting as the conscious observer, collapsing a new wave of possibility. When you type those words, you're not begging the universe to save you. You're declaring, as the universe localized in human form, that you're done manufacturing realities that betray your deeper truth. You're choosing to align your observer loop with the timeline where numbness is no longer your baseline, but a memory of who you refuse to remain. Feel what happens in your body at the thought of writing that. Maybe there's a flutter in your stomach, a tightness in your throat, a little resistance that says, what if nothing changes? That's exactly where the old loop hides, in the doubt that your choices matter. But remember, entanglement works both ways. When you publicly declare consent to your own reboot, you entangle your consciousness with every other soul making the same declaration here. That shared field amplifies your shift. So here's the ritual, completely. Hand to heart, one more slow breath. Quietly, inside yourself or out loud, you say, if nothing feels real, it's because I've outgrown this reality. I consent to the radical reboot. Then you let your fingers type it into the comments. I consent to the radical reboot. You hit send, not as a casual viewer, but as a quantum being signing a new contract with existence. That sentence becomes a signature in the field, a timestamp in your morphic resonance. A line your future self can look back on and say, that was the moment I stopped pretending. From here on, the quantum field will treat this point in your timeline as a pivot, and everything that unfolds next will have a different kind of weight, a different kind of inevitability. Because once you've consented at this level, you're no longer just the one being rebooted. You're the one reality will begin reorganizing around. The moment you wrote those words, I consent to the radical reboot, something subtle but enormous happened. Your story stopped being only about you. From that point on, your consciousness stopped acting as an isolated signal and started functioning as a node in a living network. Every rebooted choice you make from here doesn't just alter your personal timeline, it sends ripples through the collective observer loop of humanity. You may feel alone in your room, on your device, in your head, but in the quantum field, you're standing in a crowd of awakening beings, and your coherence just got turned up. Think of the human collective as a vast electromagnetic grid. For generations, that grid has been dominated by patterns of fear, scarcity, separation, and survival. Those patterns aren't just psychological, they're wavelengths, broadcast through billions of observer loops, collapsing the same type of reality every day. War, anxiety, comparison, numbness, all of it reinforced by repetition. When you were looping unconsciously, your field helped stabilize that old grid. Not because you were bad, but because that's what everyone was trained to do. But the moment you consented to the radical reboot, your signal began to shift. Instead of emitting the frequency of, this is just how life is, your field started broadcasting a different message. This pattern is complete. We're ready for something else. That single vibrational adjustment creates what quantum biologists and morphic field theorists would call a phase anomaly. A pocket of new possibility inside an old system. And systems, by their nature, cannot leave anomalies untouched. Other consciousnesses feel you, even if they don't have language for it. People around you may not know what's changed, but they'll sense a difference. They may feel strangely safe opening up to you, or irrationally irritated, or unexpectedly inspired. Your coherence acts like a tuning fork inside their own field, revealing the dissonance of their unresolved loops. Some will resist this and pull away. Others will lean in and begin to question their own normal. This is how collective awakening actually spreads. Not through arguments, not through convincing, but through entanglement. When even one observer loop in a local environment stops feeding a particular pattern, that pattern weakens for everyone entangled with it. When you refuse to participate in gossip, self-hatred, performative struggle, or chronic complaining, you don't just set a boundary. You destabilize the morphic resonance that made those behaviors feel inevitable. Every time you choose presence over autopilot, you're punching a small hole in the old reality membrane. Every time you breathe through your numbness, instead of escaping it, you open a micro-portal through which a new quality of awareness can enter the field. You may never see the full impact of these micro-choices, but the quantum field registers all of them, and it recalibrates collective probabilities accordingly. Someone you'll never meet may suddenly feel the courage to change their life because your DNA restructuring tipped the coherence balance in their region of the grid. Your personal integrity becomes planetary medicine. When you stop betraying yourself just to keep a dying timeline comfortable, you remove your energy from the collective spell that says, "We must suffer to belong." That spell loses power. Children born into a field where more and more people have broken their observer loops will instinctively reach for different possibilities. What feels like a radical reboot for you will be their baseline starting point. This is how lineages are healed without anyone giving you credit for it. And that's perfect, because your soul didn't sign up for applause. It signed up for impact. You are not required to save the world in some grand heroic gesture. You are required to stop pretending your liberation is a private matter. Your healing is not a side quest. It's central to the evolution of the species. Every timeline you refuse to loop again becomes one less option in the collective menu of suffering. Every new pattern you anchor, genuine self-respect, embodied sensitivity, coherent boundaries, creative honesty, becomes a template in the field that others can lock onto more easily. So when you doubt yourself, when you catch your mind saying, "Who do you think you are?" You're just one person. Remember what's actually true in quantum terms. You are not one separate being pushing against an immovable world. You are one focal point where the entire universe is experimenting with a new way of being itself. The radical reboot happening in you is also happening through you, for countless others you'll never meet. Your consciousness is no longer just trying to escape a broken reality. It's actively participating in the construction of a new one. And with every coherent breath, every honest choice, every refusal to loop, you're helping humanity remember that a different kind of world is not only possible, it's already forming in the quantum field, waiting for enough of us to live as if it's real. You've understood this with your mind. Now your body wants its turn. Because for all the quantum language and cosmic metaphors, the reboot is happening in the most intimate place of all, inside your skin. If you really pay attention, you can feel it not as an idea, but as a texture, a temperature, a pressure. Your consciousness is not floating somewhere above your life. It's wired into your nervous system, your heartbeat, your breath. The radical timeline reboot is writing itself directly into your cells. Notice the strange way your body has been behaving lately. Some days your chest feels heavy, like there's a stone sitting right behind your sternum. Other days, it feels oddly hollow, like someone carved out a space inside your ribs and forgot to fill it. Your stomach flips for no obvious reason. Your throat tightens when you try to speak certain truths. Your skin feels too thin for the world. These aren't random symptoms. They're somatic messages from your quantum field. Your heart is a coherence engine, and it's been working overtime. On the old timeline, your heartbeat synchronized with stress, with vigilance, with the quiet tension of pretending. Your body learned to hold its breath in subtle ways, tiny pauses in your inhale when a notification appeared, micro contractions in your shoulders during certain conversations, a constant readiness to defend, to explain, to manage other people's expectations. That was your nervous system, attuning to a reality where survival was prioritized over presence. Now, as your observer loop destabilizes, that attunement is reversing. Your body is trying to remember what it feels like to exist without constant anticipation of the next hit of stress. But because you've been living in that pattern for so long, relaxation can feel wrong, unfamiliar, even unsafe. When you finally have a moment of quiet, your system doesn't know what to do with it. It scans for danger, for something to fix, for a worry to grab onto. That's the old loop twitching as it dies. Your muscles carry timelines. Think about how your shoulders curve when you're tired, the way your spine curls when you're scrolling, the way your jaw sets when you're holding it together. Every posture is a spell you've been casting unconsciously. I must brace. I must shrink. I must be ready. The reboot invites a different spell. I am allowed to be here as I am. Right now, as you hear these words, try this. Let your spine lengthen by just a few millimeters, as if someone gently lifted a thread at the crown of your head. Let your shoulders drift a fraction of an inch away from your ears. Feel the weight of your body in whatever supports you, chair, bed, floor, and let that support actually land. This tiny shift in posture is more than comfort. It's a micro-timeline shift. You're telling your nervous system, we are no longer in constant threat. We are in transition. Your breath is the bridge between your biology and the quantum field. Shallow, fast breathing keeps you locked into the frequency of urgency and survival, the old loop. Deep, slow, rhythmic breathing pulls you into the frequency of presence, where new possibilities can actually register. When you lengthen your exhale, you're not just calming down, you're adjusting the carrier wave your consciousness uses to interact with reality. You're changing the station. You might feel buzzing in your hands sometimes, or tingling in your feet, or a strange warmth in the back of your neck. You might wake up at odd hours of the night, your mind oddly clear, your body humming with a quiet electricity. These are not glitches in your biology. They are coherent surges, moments when your field briefly aligns with your higher timeline, and the difference in frequency moves through your tissues like a soft, invisible lightning. Your mind calls it insomnia. Your soul calls it a download window. Even your fatigue carries information. The bone-deep tiredness that makes ordinary tasks feel monumental isn't proof that you're failing at being human. It's evidence of how much energy you've been spending holding together a reality that no longer fits you. Imagine trying to keep a cracked mask from falling apart by pressing it to your face all day. No wonder your muscles ache. The reboot is gently prying your hands away, letting the mask drop, inviting your real face, your real frequency to breathe. So the next time your body feels strange, instead of immediately pathologizing it, pause. Place a hand where the sensation is strongest, your chest, your stomach, your throat, and ask, quietly, what timeline are you tired of carrying? What version of me are you asking me to stop being? Then listen. Not for words, but for the slightest shift. A softening, a deeper breath, an unexpected tear, a yawn. That's your system answering. This is what embodied awakening looks like. Not floating away from your body into abstract light, but letting light reorganize the way you inhabit your body. The quantum field doesn't just want your beliefs, it wants your nervous system. It wants your posture, your breath, your heartbeat, your micro-choices. It wants to move differently through you. Because when the reboot fully locks in, it won't just be your thoughts that feel new. It will be the way your feet meet the ground, the way your lungs receive the air, the way your chest expands when you walk into a room and know, without performance or apology, I am not a glitch in this reality. I am the new operating system arriving through this body. By now you've felt it. This isn't just an awakening phase. Something deeper, older, more structural is rearranging you from the inside out. All the numbness, the déjà vu, the distorted time, the body sensations, they were the prelude. The soft warnings before the real pressure arrived. And you're in that pressure now. You can feel it in the way your life no longer lets you stay half asleep. Bridges you would have once tolerated are burning on their own. Cycles you would have once patched together are collapsing no matter how hard you try to hold them up. This is what phase transition pressure feels like at the level of DNA. On the surface, it looks like endings. Jobs destabilizing, relationships shifting or snapping, habits that once soothed you suddenly making you feel sick, goals that used to feel impressive, now landing like dead weight. You might think you're losing everything, but in the quantum field, something very different is happening. The version of reality your old observer loop was sustaining is simply reaching its expiration date. Deep inside your cells, your DNA is adjusting its broadcast. Your genetic code is not a fixed script, it's a responsive antenna. For years, it's been tuned to the frequencies of survival, compliance, and repetition. That tuning dictated which potentials could express through your body, your emotions, your thoughts. But once you consented to the radical reboot, once your coherence began to rise, the signal changed. Your DNA started listening to a different station. That's when the pressure increased. Think of water again at the boiling point. Below 100 degrees Celsius, heat just makes it warmer water. Above 100 degrees Celsius, it becomes vapor. But right at the edge, at the threshold, there's turbulence. Bubbles surge. Surface tension trembles. Structure breaks and reforms in milliseconds. That's where your consciousness is, right at the edge of no longer being able to stay water in a container that cannot hold you. You feel it as emotional whiplash. One moment you're strangely peaceful, the next you're flooded with grief, anger, or fear that seems disproportionate to whatever's happening on the surface. Those surges aren't proof that you're failing. They're pockets of old frequency being squeezed out of your system as your DNA restructures to support a different baseline. The emotions rise to be felt, witnessed, and released, not recycled. You also feel it as timeline friction. You'll notice days where reality seems to glitch more than usual. People forgetting conversations you remember clearly. Plans rearranging in ways that make no logical sense, but ultimately benefit you. Events syncing with impossible precision. These are interference patterns between the timeline you're leaving and the one you're collapsing into. Entanglement hasn't fully resolved yet, so you're walking with one foot in each world. On the old track, everything in you screams, "I can't do this anymore." On the new track, everything in you whispers, "I was always built for this." Your nervous system interprets this as pressure, an urgency that doesn't have a clear object. You wake up feeling like you're late for something, even if your calendar is empty. That sensation is not a psychological mistake. It's your body's way of registering that your observer loop is nearing its point of no return. Once your DNA fully locks into the higher configuration, the old patterns will no longer be able to run with the same power. You're racing against nothing except your own hesitation. This is why distractions are losing their anesthetic effect. The shows don't hit the same. The scrolling feels like chewing cardboard. Even the fantasies you used to escape into no longer offer relief. Your system won't let you pour the new frequency into the same numbing containers. The observer loop is losing access to its favorite hiding places. And here's the quiet miracle beneath the pressure. Your timeline is already shifting. If you look closely, you can see the evidence. Subtle but undeniable improvements in how you respond. Boundaries you never could hold before now emerging from your mouth before you can overthink them. Moments where you would have spiraled into self-blame now turning into opportunities for self-honesty. People entering your life who feel like they know a version of you you're only just starting to meet. This is morphic resonance in action. As your DNA restructures, you become more compatible with other beings who've made similar shifts. You entangle with different networks, different invitations, different probabilities. The quantum field routes you toward experiences that reflect your new coherence and away from those that would re-entrench the old loop. The pressure won't last forever. There's a click point, a moment, sometimes subtle, sometimes dramatic, when the internal reconfiguration completes enough that the external chaos starts to calm. When your observer loop stops needing to be dismantled because it's been replaced. When numbness is no longer your shield, but a memory of how your consciousness protected itself while the surgery took place. You're approaching that click. So if it feels like everything is stretching, cracking, shaking, if nothing feels real because the old reality has lost its permission to define you, know this: you are not breaking down. You are crossing the event horizon of your own evolution, and on the other side, your DNA will remember a version of you who never needed the loop to feel real in the first place. There is a moment in every true reboot where the question flips. Up until now, you've been asking, what if nothing feels real because I'm losing myself? But as your DNA crosses this threshold, a different question begins to rise from somewhere deeper than thought. What if nothing feels real because the old self was never fully me? This is where you are now, not at the end of something, but at the first stable step of an entirely new mission. Your consciousness is no longer just trying to escape a looping reality. It is recruiting you into the very reason you incarnated in the first place. You didn't come here just to awaken and enjoy a slightly nicer version of life. You came as a carrier of coherence in a world addicted to repetition. The numbness, the glitches, the déjà vu. The distorted time, they were all pressure alarms, making it impossible for you to keep pretending that a borrowed script could ever feel like home. Now that you've consented to the radical reboot, you're something different, a walking phase transition in human form. Your mission is not complicated. It is, in fact, disarmingly simple. Live as proof that another configuration of reality is possible. You do that every time you choose truth over performance. Every time you let a chapter end, instead of dragging it out past its natural death. Every time you breathe through the urge to self-betray and decide, even in a small way, to honor what your inner field is actually asking for. Your observer loop used to manufacture realities that kept you small and predictable. Now, as coherence stabilizes, that same observer function becomes a lens through which the quantum field can project new templates into the collective. Your presence in a room will quietly alter the timelines available to everyone in it. A single sentence spoken from your new frequency will land inside someone else, like a seed that doesn't stop growing. None of this requires you to be perfect. It only requires you to stop pretending you're powerless. You'll still have human moments, doubt, grief, confusion, anger, but those will no longer define your timeline. They'll pass through you instead of circling you. When you catch yourself slipping toward the old loop, you won't collapse into shame. You'll recognize it as a ghost pattern and gently re-choose. That re-choosing again and again, in ordinary days, is how prophecy becomes physics. Your life becomes your teaching, not through speeches, but through the quiet way your reality starts to rearrange. People will notice opportunities that seem to just appear, synchronicities that border on impossible, a steadiness in your eyes that wasn't there before. Some will ask how you did it. Others will just feel safer being themselves around you. That is your mission fulfilling itself. Because your reboot is not just about upgrading your own experience. It's about contributing a new note to the symphony of human consciousness, one that refuses to play on repeat. The quantum field has been waiting for enough beings like you to hold that note long enough for it to become a new baseline for the species. So when the numbness tries to return, remember what it really meant. It was never proof that nothing matters. It was proof that the false life you'd been sustaining could no longer contain the magnitude of who you are. From here, your task is simple and sacred. Stay coherent. Stay honest. Stay available to the reality that feels more like remembrance than effort. Because in the end, this is the deepest truth of your journey. If nothing feels real anymore, it's because your consciousness is already preparing a radical timeline reboot. You can't resist. And now, finally, you're ready to live the reality that was always waiting on the other side of that feeling.